Jesus does not believe in God. But first, before I get started, I would like to give you guys a very, very brief definition of the word belief. And a very simple definition is to have an assumption that something, someplace, or someone exists and you have no proof. So that so I that is very important that you guys understood, because I know that the title of the story of this video, does not believe in God. I know when some individuals see this title, they say, "What? We know Jesus believe in God and blah 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 blah." So that is what I'm trying to say. Based on the definition, that's what we're talking about. This definition, that's what I'm basing this video on. So back to the video. Therefore, if you think that someone, someplace, or something exists without having any proof, then you believe. Therefore, I would like to ask the question, do you think Jesus believed in God, or do you think Jesus knew God existed? And my answer would be, I think throughout the scripture, there was quite enough evidence that Jesus did not see himself as being separate from God. Therefore, I would like to say the number one root cause of most of our suffering is not that we believe in God, it is just that we do not know who we are. And so, just a very brief recap based on the definition. What I said, if you believe something exists and you do not have any evidence of that thing existing, it might be a physical thing, it could be a place, it could be anything that you believe that exists but you have no evidence, would be considered a belief. I think I gave a different definition, but I'm just kind of giving you guys an idea. And so the major question was, do you think Jesus believed in God, or do you think Jesus knew God exists? And so that's what we're talking about again, the difference between knowing something and believing something. And so that's what we're talking about. And then again, like I said, the root cause of not knowing God exists is the root cause of not knowing, the root cause of not knowing God exists, correct, is that you don't know yourself. So let's move it along. And with that being said, it reminds me of a quote, a famous quote from the late Einstein. Einstein said, information is not knowledge, and the only true source of knowledge is experience. Therefore, if you have a lot of information, book smart, a lot of information accumulated in the mind, that does not mean that it is true. And if you have not experienced something, it is not your truth. So that is another powerful fact that I said. Again, Einstein said that information is not uh, truth. It's just, knowledge, information. When you read a book or whatever the case may be, you could go to school, you could go to college, and you could, whatever the case, a technical school or any school for that matter of fact, how to fix a car engine, how to do some type of, fix something electronic device or something of the sort. You could accumulate a lot of book smart, a lot of book knowledge, but however, until you actually go and try to put that engine in, or you try to go and fix that car, or try to go and fix that television, you do not really have the experience. It's not yet truth yet. as yet. So that is what uh, a lot of people are going off. They're just going off what someone told them about a belief system. Uh, they heard someone believe this and believe that and blah blah blah. And then we also have the community that we live in, environment and things of the sort. So we tend to believe what others believe, but it's not really our, our true belief, our belief based on our experience. So just keep that in mind.
So, with that being said, I would like to ask you guys a question. Do you believe you exist? Do you believe the sun exists? Do you believe the moon exists? Do you believe you are breathing? Do you believe you have a body? And if you say yes to any of those things, you do not believe you know. Therefore, today's video is not to dissect whether there is a God or God exists. It is the fact that you do not know who you are. Therefore, it will be most likely impossible for you to know anything exists outside of yourself.
That is another very powerful. Sorry, that is a very powerful. Sorry, but that is a very powerful statement that I just said. I just wanted to clarify that again. I am not here trying to say that God does not exist. That is not what I'm talking about at all. I'm not here to try to discredit anybody's belief system. I'm not here to do any of that. I am here simply to try to expand the mind so that individuals may be able to look at themselves and what they believe, maybe from a different perspective, and look at why they believe what they believe. But again, like I said, everything boils down to not knowing who you are. Because if you do not know who you are, like I said, it is impossible for you to know anything else to be concrete. For example, if those who you know want to be loved, it's next to impossible to experience love if you do not love yourself first and foremost. That is something, that is what I'm trying to say. You have to actually experience the thing first before you can actually go ahead and give it away. You have to become love first before you can love anybody else, because if you do not love anybody, if you do not love yourself, it is impossible for you to love anybody else as well. So anyway, with that being said, let's move it along.
Which is why I do not believe in believing. And I think the solution to finding yourself is we must stop from going outside of ourselves, looking externally for our salvation and solutions. And the only way this can happen is if we look inside. And throughout the scriptures and many other sacred scriptures teach that salvation and the kingdom of heaven is within. Which brings me to another fact, a scripture. I think the story was, yes, the story was Sodom and Gomorrah when Lot.
So before I start this next piece of scripture, that's what I'm saying. It's like all of us, we tend to give our power away by looking outside of ourselves. The Bible specifically said that the kingdom of heaven is within you. And if the Bible says that the kingdom of heaven is within you, and we are following the Bible, why do we look outside of ourselves for this kingdom? Why do we think that this kingdom will come someday, one day, outside of ourselves? Why do we think that we cannot find this kingdom of heaven within ourselves? And I think this is one of the first biggest mistakes that we all make or have made at one point, throughout our lives. Every single, I wouldn't say every single individual, but I would say the majority of individuals has made this mistake, looking for some type of spiritual relief or some spiritual entity or something to be found outside of the self. And I think this mistake is a big, big mistake. And again, like I said, the reason that we do have this problem, that we do experience this lack of understanding, is because, again, that's why, again, the Bible said, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And so, again, because of lack of knowledge, and we do not know who we are and what we are, we tend to believe that this thing that we want to believe in is not within us. And that is a major, major, that is one of the first things, again, that we must achieve, is having an understanding of who and what we are first and foremost before we try to do anything else. Because once we continue to always look outside of ourselves, looking up and down and left and right, in the sky and under the earth, wherever it may be, in the seas, in the trees, wherever we may be looking, and if we're not looking inside ourselves, then we can expect to be disappointed and be misled.
Sodom and Gomorrah was about to be destroyed by the angels, and Lot was recommended by the angels to go into the mountains. However, Lot refused to go into the mountains. He went eventually, but at first he did not want to go into the mountains. And for those of us who know anything about scripture and sacred texts, usually the term mountain usually refers to the higher self, the higher mind, and higher consciousness as well. Therefore, what that scripture was saying is that Lot did not want to leave his comfort zone. He did not want to look into himself. He did not want to look into his higher mind. He wanted to stay in his comfort zone. And the reason I said that is because when he was recommended to go into the mountains, he said that he would prefer to go into a nearby city in a very small town called Zoar. And that would be a perfect example of what most of us do today. Yes, we may attend certain spiritual rituals, such as attend church. Yes, we may read our scriptures. Yes, we may pray. Yes, we may do certain things. We may be kind. We may be nice. We may do all these things. But however, when it comes to going internally and doing some type of deep introspection, we fail to do so miserably.
So this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. This story right here, Sodom and Gomorrah. And like I said, if you guys go ahead and watch my previous video, I think the video before this was called You Are the Christ. And I go into some great, great detail, some spiritual, a lot of spiritual, esoteric knowledge as well. But so again, a lot of these uh, individuals, they interpret these scriptures. Again, I'm not here to tell you what to believe or whatever the case may be. However, I'm just giving you my input from my perspective, from what I've learned, and so forth and so forth. Because I too, at one point, took a lot of these scriptures to be literal and not having the understanding of what they really meant on a more deeper level. Because once you take the scriptures to be more so literal, it's going to be very difficult for you to get the maximum benefit from the scriptures, because a lot of the teaching and the information is more so symbolic and allegorical. And there's a few scriptures actually that made that quite clear, that the scriptures are allegorical as well. But I'm not talking about that today per se. But this is a perfect example of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah and Lot being confronted by the angels, and they told Lot to enter into the mountains before the destruction came about of Sodom and Gomorrah. And Lot refuses to go into the mountains. But again, those who may be familiar with scriptures and biblical texts, and maybe having a more so of a thesaurus and a Christian dictionary, and you go and you look at some of these words, and you look at the meaning and the etymology of these words, you realize that the words themselves, they have different meanings. So when we're talking, like I said, when they talk about the mountains, anytime you see scriptures talking about the mountains, different things of that sort, they're talking about high places. They're in most cases they're talking about a higher state of mind, a higher state of consciousness, a higher state of being. That is what they are referring to. In most cases, they're not literally talking about a physical mountain. They're talking about going to a place in the highest state of mind to where you are now. When you see spiritual teachers talking about meditation and things of that sort, be still and know that I'm God. Things of that sort. That is what they're talking about. They're talking about the stilling of the mind and understanding, uh, entering a higher state of consciousness. So the angels was basically telling Lot to basically enter that higher state of mind to avoid destruction. Sodom and Gomorrah more so representing the lower carnal mind, the sinful nature of the mind, things of that sort. That is what Sodom and Gomorrah represents from an esoteric perspective. Again, not the traditional message that you may hear from your traditional spiritual leader, your pastor, your priest, or your prophet, sorry, pastor, priest, or a traditional teacher may tend to just teach you these stories to be literal. But again, if you go and you study much more deeper some of the historical ancient texts that were forbidden, some of the stories, the apocryphas, and those books that were removed from the Bible, they have a totally different, completely different perspective on the scriptures. And so the story is no different. You can see the story about Lot and Sodom and Gomorrah as being a literal story, or you could see it as being a metaphorical allegory talking about uh, avoiding destruction and damnation, uh, by going into a higher, elevating to a higher spiritual mindset. And that is what Lot was told to do by the angels, but Lot resisted, and because he did not want to, because that's what the scriptures are saying, that most individuals do not want to go and look into themselves.
And the reason Lot said that he did not want to enter the mountain was because he was afraid that some evil will befall him, or some evil or detriment will come about on his behalf. Therefore, most of us would say that we are afraid to look inside because we are afraid to find what we may find. Which brings me to another reference point. I can't remember who it was, if it was a philosopher. I think it was a philosopher, I'm not quite sure, or maybe a famous psychiatrist. They once said that man's greatest fear is to stay in a room alone, all by himself, and just look into himself. This is a very common factor that most individuals may not be aware of. That is the number one reasons why we do not know God. We believe in God because we choose to not look within ourselves.
So I think by now you guys are starting to see where this is going to go, because again, the title of this video is Jesus does not believe in God. And again, some individuals may have thought that I was going to say something very negative. However, that is not the case at all. I am stating that Jesus knew who he was exactly. Jesus knew who God was exactly. And Jesus knew the relationship he had with God. So again, it is impossible for you to know God per se if you do not know who you are. And if you do not know who you are, you would not be able to know the relationship that you have with God. It's kind of like having a family member. Let's say, for example, you have a child, and the child never knew who the father was. The child grew up all of his life not knowing who the father was. And let's say, for example, the father was maybe a king. A father was a king, or even a mother was a queen. It doesn't have to be a male, but let's say, for example, the child parents were royalty. The mother was a queen or the father was a king, but for one reason or another, the child was maybe taken away a lot earlier for one reason or another, or sent away, and the child never knew his or her parents, and so the child never got to know that they were literally royalty by blood. They didn't know that they were a part of the Godhead, if I may say. They did not know that they were a part of this kingdom, and they did not know the position that they had. And the same thing applies to you, because if the child does not know who the parents are, the child would assume that maybe I am just, some shepherd or some carpenter or whatever. And I shouldn't say carpenter because Jesus was a carpenter. But better choice of words, the child might think that, hey, I'm just, a regular person, a regular civilian, not knowing the historical background that their family really is royalty. And that's what I'm talking about. It is impossible for you to know who God is if you do not know who you are as well.
And there are many reference scriptures and other spiritual uh, literature that speaks heavily about looking into oneself and getting a deeper introspection of the mind, and that is where the true self will be found. Looking back at my life, I would also say that there was once a time that I did not know anything about meditation. I heard about it, I did not really know. All I knew was to pray. And there's nothing wrong with prayer because this is what most of us do. Prayer is also a form of a spiritual act as well. However, there is a major difference in reference to prayer and meditation. Meditation is basically going within and trying to silence the mind, trying to observe the thoughts, and trying to get to that still place, that observer being the observed as well. On the other hand, you have prayer. Prayer is more as if you are externally looking outward and expecting some type of uh, answer to come from an outside source. However, in meditation, we are not looking to an outside source. We are trying to find that outside source from within. Therefore, the solution that I could think of, that would be the number one reason why we do not find God, we do not know God. It's not that God may not exist or do not exist. In fact, I sometimes hate to use the word God because that is a very loaded and somewhat contaminated word as well. Only because if you look throughout history, many individuals have died, many individuals have suffered in the name of this thing or person or whatever you may label God to be as the cause of many, many suffering. Many lives was taken in the name of God. Also, when you use the name God, you have to be careful and understand that there are many different individuals who have many different beliefs, and there is not just one God in reference to the many religions and spiritual beliefs as well. However, I think it is okay that I would just use the Western God, if I may say, because Western God, the Western religions is mainly monotheist, and they usually believe in one God. However, in the East, there is usually numerous or a plethora of gods. So when I'm talking in this video, I am talking about the the Western religion God, the omnipotent, all seeing, all knowing, the creator of the universe, the creator of the heavens and earth, and the God that is mentioned in the Bible in Genesis chapter 1 and throughout.
So that's another major factor that I want to clarify here. I know most individuals will say, uh, especially religious individuals, will say that there is one God, and I am not here again to debate whether there is a God or not. I am simply saying that the word God itself is a very delicate word because once we use the word God, we have to be thinking about who we are talking to, what context we're using the word in, and where the individuals are, what part of the world that they are in. Because, for example, like I said, individuals in the east, eastern world, the eastern parts of the world, they have more than one God. In most cases, there are thousands and thousands, and maybe even millions of gods that exist. And then when we go to the west, we have more so of a monotheist type of God. Again, many gods, polytheist, theism, and then monotheism, one God in the West, and most individuals in the West tend to just lean on the biblical God, the Christian God, and that is all we tend to know. But however, if you do go to, if you are from the West, and again you do go to some other major country, you will have you will have a culture shock when you find out that these individuals have all of these different beliefs and these different belief systems. And again, I know most individuals who may be strong religious believers. That is going to be an issue for these individuals. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, having such strong dogmatic belief systems and not having any religious tolerance for other belief systems as well, we're having all of these problems today. Most of the problems that happen throughout different cultures and races and so forth has to do with the word God. One culture believing in one belief, another culture believing in another belief, and one culture cannot get along with that other culture because they have a different God. And that is a major problem. So that's why I'm saying I hate to even use the word God because when I use the word God, individuals sometimes they look at me also as well and I'm stigmatized and then they say, hey, maybe he's talking about this God or maybe he's not talking about my God and it's just one big one big confusion because again, they just don't really know that much about other belief systems. So when people, again, so it's almost like you have to be very careful when you're using the word God. That's why I said I almost don't even prefer to use the word God because I have to really be careful who I'm talking to. And then when I use the word God, most individuals, they see me, they look at me, they automatically assume that, they assume I believe this or I believe that, and they don't really know what I believe per se. You know what I'm saying? So again, that is something that to take into great account. That from a Western perspective, there's only one God, but from a Eastern perspective, there are many gods. And so, if you want to say, hey, these guys are wrong and this and that, that is where again why we're having wars today. That is why there's so many deaths and killings and so forth because of individuals who so strongly believe in their one God and they don't have any spiritual or religious tolerance for anybody else who believes in anything else. And we could go back in time to the Crusades and so forth, back in the day when they had all of the trying to convert the individuals, the Spanish Inquisition back in the day when if you didn't have a particular belief system, you were tortured and so forth. We are still having those problems today, but we're just not being tortured in the same way. You might not, be burned to a stake if you have a different belief system, but if you do have a different belief system, you may have a problem, in one area, one shape, form, or another. I could even speak for myself because I say I know for a fact sometimes when individuals see me, they tend to believe, they have a certain perspective about me. They don't really know me, but they just automatically assume I believe this and I believe that. They don't know what I really believe per se, but then they classify me in one box, and then they put me, you know, in a group. They group me with a certain set of people, and they don't really know anything about me. They don't know how intelligent I am, academically wise, credentials, and so forth and so on. They just automatically assume I am one of those guys. So that is something we tend to do naturally. Base people based on their belief systems. If you have a different belief system than the masses, the groups, you are somewhat sometimes ostracized, or you could be put aside, or you could be frowned upon, or you could be looked down upon, and even sometimes you may not get certain opportunities, may not come your way because individuals are judging you based on their belief systems. And that is what I'm saying. Our religious beliefs is actually very damaging and poisoning. It actually affects us in a very negative way. We think that we are not doing any harm, but actually religion has been one of the most dangerous belief systems that exist today, and still is very harmful up to this very day. So we need to keep that in account, that because you have a belief in one God, you need to. I'm not saying that there's not one God. I'm just saying that because again, I'm here to educate. I'm here to just talk in general. I'm talking generally. I'm not here to side with a particular God. I'm not saying this God is real, that God is not real. I'm not saying any of that. I'm saying that individuals who do have a belief in one God need to take into consideration that there are other individuals born different parts of the world who have different cultures and have different belief systems, who are just as much equally serious about their God just as much as you. They're willing to fight for their God. They're willing to kill for their God, just like you. So we need to work on that, not being so narrow-minded. So because this are and technically the gods that we believe in are actually, in some cases, doing more harm than good, separating us as a group of people, separating us as individuals as well.
Again, the root cause of not knowing God exists is because most individuals, just like Lot, fail to go within. So therefore, I highly, highly recommend that most individuals practice some form of internal meditation there where they can look within themselves and find some type of answer to all of their problems without actually sacrificing themselves by giving away the power that they have that was given to them as well. I think would it be a better, I would, wrong choice of words, not better because there's no better and no best. However, I think a great example that most Westerners would struggle with, because most individuals believe that they exist, but they do not really exist in the way that they think they exist. And what I'm saying is that we tend to believe that we are our jobs. We tend to believe that we are our relationships, our titles. I am a parent, I am a cousin, I am a brother, I am a mother, I am a teacher, I am a gardener, I am a barber, I am a student. We tend to associate ourselves with this I, this false self, or in other words, the Buddhists may call it the non-self. And the non-self concept is, I think, the 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 first the first solution that is needed in order to know there is a God. One again must find themselves first and foremost. Because if you do not know yourself, it is most likely impossible for you to know someone else, whether they be God or someone in the natural as well. So again, using the Buddha as a great example, another enlightened being.
And this is again, this is my point. So, from my perspective, I've had so much exposure over the years. I've spent some time different parts of the world, and I've been exposed to so many different belief systems, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, all these different uh, Eastern religions. They have a totally, completely, totally different perspective on God and the self. And so, this information I'm about to talk about now is more so from the Buddhist perspective, how the Buddhists see themselves, how the Buddhists look at the being, the self, the true self. And I think this is the one of the root problems again, because individuals in the West, they do not see themselves like this. They see themselves as, like I said, when you ask them about themselves, they tend to see themselves as being their job, their career. They associate themselves with their material possessions. They associate themselves with the titles. I am a doctor, I am a lawyer, I am this, I am that. It's all about the I, me. That is what individuals in the West tend to do. They tend to label themselves as these I's, these things, and so they tend to believe, because they believe that they are these things, the false self, the I, like I said in the Buddhist, the non-self is what I'm about to talk about now. And the Buddhists see themselves completely different. They don't see themselves as being any of these things, and so that is a big difference. That is why I'm creating these videos, these very first videos. I'm talking a lot about spirituality, but you remember now, guys, they call me Triple P, Pimp, Prophet, and Priest. And so these videos right now that I'm talking about some spirituality and different things. So I'm not using any profanity or anything of that sort. It's very, very calm, cool, and collective, because I'm talking about God. However, if you go and watch some of my other videos when I'm talking about relationships and dating and things of that sort, I am using a lot of profanity, and I am, cursing and all that stuff and so forth, because I'm talking about relationships. That is a different ball game. That is why, like I said, I wear three different hats: pimp, prophet, and priest. Sometimes you may hear me talk about, when I'm talking about religion, spirituality, and so forth, I am talking about God and so forth. The subject matters, I'm a lot more calm, cool, and collective. And then you may hear me talk about astrology. That's a different subject matter as well. And then you may hear, when I'm talking from the pimp perspective, I'm talking about dating, relationship, coaching, and all that stuff, giving relationship advice and all that stuff. That is a different ball game altogether. But again, back to what I was saying here. Again, the more in the West tend to look at the self as a title. I am this, I am that, I am my job, I am a mother, I am a cousin, I am an aunt, I am a carpenter, I am a whatever the case may be. We tend to associate ourselves more so with the physical body, with our identity, but we tend to not look at ourselves more so as the essence, the isness, the I amness that we truly are. That's what I'm about to talk about right here as I go on. And again, this is again just for the record, all of these videos, I created these videos one time, and I never went back and I never looked at it. So I don't really know what I'm going to say. I've just, because again, I created the video one time. Now I'm looking at it for the second time for my created the video. But however, I do know, as it stands, looks like my perspective has not changed.
The Buddhists have many different concepts in reference to their spiritual practices. And I'm not here to go into every single thing, because I'm just giving you guys something that is going to help you to eliminate this idea of the false self. And I too, just like many who may be watching this video today, I was not always aware of this non-self. I too believed I was this, I was that, I was this, I was that. They call me Triple P, Pimp, Prophet, and Priest, PIMP. I too believed I was the title. I believed I was a student. I believed All of these things I believed about myself for most of my life. However, it was only until much, much later down the line, getting much deeper into my spiritual practices and studying other esoteric knowledges is one of the deep and the most one of the root causes that gave me the ability to find this knowledge and work more deeply on myself.
So, like I said, even myself, like I said, I too, just like 99.9% of the individuals in the West, I too associated myself with the physical body. I too saw myself as the student. I saw myself as the Mr. Loverman. I saw myself as, the girls them sugar. You understand me? So I did see myself as all of these things, the physical things and the titles that I was given in the world. However, again, just like most individuals, we do not look. Once you have a belief system, you were born, maybe like I said, in the West, it is most unlikely that you will go and look into some other belief systems. Most individuals who may be born of a more of a an Abrahamic faith, they do not look into any other belief systems. Most people from Abrahamic faiths would never look into Buddhism, they would never look into Hinduism, they would never look into Sikhism, they would never look into any type of belief system because they are set in stone that their belief system is correct, the only way, and their way, or it's the highway. And so I too was like that as well a lot earlier on in life, not having uh, the understanding of other cultures and other beliefs. But again, I was more open-minded again having some travel experience, being exposed to different people, different cultures, and different things. I too had to become a lot more open-minded. I was not able to just be so narrow-minded and reject everyone that came along that did not have my belief systems, because in society, if you're living in a very small place, where the majority is that way, you know, you are fine, you're great. Let's say, for example, you're living on an island or somewhere like that, and the majority of the people in the island have the same on the island have the same one belief. It is that is common. That is going to be okay for you to do that, and get you can get away with it living in such a small pond, if I may say, in such a small select a very small population. But if you move to a bigger culture, a bigger place, a bigger country where there's millions of other people who have different beliefs than you, and you go to that place and you try to just put down your belief as the law, you're going to encounter a lot of problems. That is why society, some places have more wars and more problems than others, because those places are so dogmatic about what they believe, and they have very little, next to no room for anybody else to come along talking about anything else. And that's what I'm saying. So because I was exposed to so much other different belief systems and cultures, I was fortunate enough to be open-minded enough to at least look into what they were saying or hear what they had to say. And because I remember at one point in time, when I was at one point in time I was studying with uh, I had individuals coming to my house that were Mormons, Jehovah Witness, Christians. I was studying heavily the Buddhism and things of that sort. I was studying all of these different belief systems simultaneously, and that is very uncommon for anyone for the most part. Once they believe something, that is why it's called a belief. We believe the thing, but that does not make it a fact. And I believe that every individual, every religious or every religion has some type of truth. Everybody does not have the whole truth and nothing but the truth. You could take some truth from this religion, that religion. You could take some truth from this person, from that person. There are some people, your pastor does not have all the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Your guru does not have all the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That is why there are almost 8 billion people in the world. So you could take some of that knowledge and information from this person, that person, because nobody is complete. And so that again, religion is something that actually hinders us and causes us to not expand our mind, and it causes us to limit ourselves because of our limiting beliefs. But again, like I said, I was fortunate enough to be able to open my mind and look into other belief systems and learn about other cultures as well. So I highly suggest, again, individuals who may have a particular belief system, when other individuals come along and they try to expose you to what they believe or whatever, I highly suggest that you do open your mind up, because I will even say this from a perspective when I talk about astrology and things of that sort. Some individuals, as soon as I say the word astrology, some individuals tend to, kind of, shut down, not knowing what it is. They don't know anything about it. They just automatically assume that I'm talking about some type of, witchcraft or black magic. They don't even know anything about it, despite the fact it is being mentioned in the Bible and different cultures. And as far as I'm concerned, the historical facts about astrology is way older than many of these more modern religious beliefs, because they have documents about astrology and all type of historical uh, literature and drawings and all different type of artifacts that confirm that astrology is something that that did not just come about yesterday. For thousands of years, astrology existed, but again, modern society not having the knowledge, the wisdom, and understanding about it, they would just, shut it down, not understanding that at some time back, astrology was even considered a science, and then after a period of time, astronomy became the major science, and then over a period of time, astrology became also of a pseudoscience, and most individuals who would see astrology as something that is somewhat of a more so of a fluke, not understanding that it's based on mathematics, angles, and all of these different deep scientific methods, if I may say, in reference to how an astrologer comes up with the answers. But again, the moral of the story is I understand completely, because when individuals even encounter me and I talk to them about certain things, I have to really be careful about what I say, because I know how sensitive people are, especially most religious individuals from the West. Individuals from the West are almost, I would say, some of the most dogmatic individuals and narrow-minded individuals that exist on the planet, because you approach someone from the West and you say the wrong thing about their belief or their God, you're gonna have a problem. So that is what I'm saying. We need to become a lot more open-minded in reference to hearing what others have to say. You don't have to believe them. You don't have to, but at least be open-minded enough to listen to what they have to say, because you never know. They may say something that may actually make you second guess. But again, we don't want to second guess what we believe. We want to believe what we believe at all costs, even if it is wrong. We want to believe it. That is why it is called ignorance, and it's also delusional to believe things that do not exist, and to believe something that is not factual, and only because you believe it does not make it real. But again, like I said, most individuals, spiritually or religiously speaking, are delusional.
Which is why the Bible also says, study to show thyself approved, which is what most individuals do not do, because when they have a particular belief or they have a particular religion that they follow, most individuals fail to look into anything else. They would just normally say that their knowledge, information, and understanding is the truth and there is no other. However, I think this is one of the most grievous mistakes any individual could make, to believe that they have the total truth.
It looks like I'm jumping the gun, because, like I said, I haven't watched this video. I don't know what is coming up, so I'm just speaking. But I'm seem like I'm speaking ahead of myself, which actually confirms that I still have the same belief systems as well.
And the truth are nothing but the truth as well.
But again, like I said earlier too, I do not believe in believing. So I'm not here to talk about believing in anything. I'm trying to actually discourage individuals from believing things and start to know things more so as a fact. Like I said in the very beginning of the video, you don't have to believe that the sun exists. You don't believe that the moon exists. You know they exist because you see those things every day. But when it comes down to our religious beliefs, we don't have to see anything. We don't have to get any facts. We just believe it because we were told to believe it, and because our parents believe it, our cultures believe it, our friends and family believe it, so we believe it as well. So that's why I said this is one of the most dangerous things that ever existed in the world, is having all of these religious belief systems.
So back to the Buddhists. Again, the Buddhist has many, many practices, many different spiritual beliefs. However, the Buddhist, and the reason I'm using the Buddhist is because the Buddhist has a very unique concept on the self, unlike any other religion or spiritual practice that I can think of. Not that any other spiritual practice or spiritual belief is incorrect. It is just that the Buddhist main goal is to eliminate suffering, because the Buddhists acknowledge that suffering exists, and to stop the suffering is the number one focus of Buddhists. There's nothing else, everything else is secondary, but the main focus is suffering. And according to the Buddhists, the main reason for suffering is you do not know yourself. Yes, there are other practices, all type of, we have samsara, we have the six realms, we have the three poisons, we have the four noble truths, we have the eightfold path, and all of these things, and much, much more. However, I am specifically talking about the self or the non-self.
I see all of those stuff that I just said is now the eightfold path and all that, the three poisons and so forth and so on. Those are things that I have studied and have the knowledge that I've accumulated studying Buddhism, and that's why I said I think the Buddhist concepts are some of the most unique uh, different belief systems or spiritual practices than any other belief system that I could think of. They are very unique. The Buddhism and the Hindus, those Eastern philosophies, they are nothing like the West, the Western belief systems. And like I said earlier, that their one number one goal is to eliminate suffering. They are not talking like the Christians. Again, nothing against any belief system. I am simply here to educate the Christians, or the Abrahamic, better choice of words, because I don't want anyone to think that I'm picking on their belief. By no means that is the case. I am here to solely educate and sometimes entertain. So at the same time, like I said, the Abrahamic faiths, the Judaism, Christian, and so forth, Islamic, all of those are Abrahamic faiths. They are talking about salvation. They're talking about being saved. They're talking about going to heaven, things of that sort. But the Buddhists, their major uh, goal, if I may say, or all of their energy goes into pretty much eliminating suffering. Why are you suffering? What is causing us to suffer? What are the root causes of all the suffering in the world today? That is what the Buddhists are putting all of their emphasis on. Yes, they're talking about birth and rebirth and all of that stuff as well, but what they're really, really putting their energy on and focusing is on now, today, in the real world today. We're not talking about afterlife when we die and all. Yes, they're talking about some of that too, but that even that concept that they're talking about is a completely different concept from what we are traditionally believe, follow in our Abrahamic faiths. Yes, again, they do talk about after life and so forth, incarnation, reincarnation, things of that sort, rebirth. But again, as far as they're concerned, they are putting a lot of emphasis on now, while we are alive. What can we do to eliminate suffering? What can we do to eliminate pain? What can we do to make our life better, happier, and healthier? And the root cause, or the number one cause of this, is not knowing thyself, not knowing who you are. And that is what the Buddhists put all of their, most of their, I would say all, 99% of their emphasis is knowing the self, because the Buddhists believe that you cannot know anything or know anything about anything, especially spirituality subjects such as God and deep philosophical subjects such as heaven and hell and all of these deep afterlife subject matters unless you know who you are. So you might hear me talk a lot about Buddhism throughout many of my videos because I am using something that is different than what you have been told. You guys have already been heard. You guys know all about heaven and hell and Christianity and Jesus and Moses and Abraham. We know these things, but most of us in the West do not know anything about what the Buddhists believe. So that's why I'm putting emphasis on something different. And again, as a teacher, most individuals might not understand. If you are a teacher, if you do not learn anything new, I did not teach you anything. A teacher job is to teach you something that you did not know. So when you watch my videos or when I talk about things, my job is to educate you, inform you, and enlighten you so that when you walk away, you will know something that you did not know before, and you will actually use that information that could maybe be empowering or better you in one shape, form, or another. So again, the Buddhists, their concept is all about the non-self, not having identity issues and not being confused with the self, with the false self. That is what they're putting all their emphasis on to eliminate suffering, knowing who you are.
that the Buddhists so adamantly promote, if I may say. Therefore, that is why I am using the Buddhists as an example in reference to making my point clear. The reason you believe in God is because you believe in yourself as well. You believe that you are the person that you think you are. You believe that you are, again, a teacher, a student, a pastor, whatever it is that the title that you are, male or female, whatever it is that you think you are, that is incorrect according to the teachings of the Buddha. And no, I am not saying that the self does not exist. I am saying that the self does not exist in the way that you think it exists, because most individuals, when they think of themselves as an eternal soul, and they believe and that there is not a they are not there is not any change. They believe that they are a fixed self. They believe that they are, again, a soul, if I may say. They do not understand the depths of who they truly are, which
And just for the record, this is a very, very, very delicate subject matter that I'm talking about, and this is a very deep, heavy, heavy subject matter that I'm talking about as well. I'm trying to get you guys to understand the difference how the Buddhists see themselves versus how the West sees themselves. Most individuals, like I said, they see themselves as the I, the this, the that, the job, the student, the pastor, the husband, the wife, the whatever title that they see themselves as. However, the Buddhists, they don't see themselves as that. They see themselves as something that they consider to be a non self. The self that is none of these things, that is what the Buddhists see themselves as no thing, a non-thing, and that is completely different from what the Abrahamic faiths and the average individual in the West views themselves as being a body or a mind or a soul. All of these things are not what the Buddhists would be considered the true self. All of those categories would fall under the non-self.
is why, again, I am creating this video, and I'm using the Buddhist, uh, the five-fold aggregates to make my point. So the Buddhists have a concept which they call the five aggregates, and the five aggregates simply states that the person that you think you are not a fixed, permanent self, if I may say. You are you are comprised of five aggregates or five parts that make up yourself, and they flow smoothly, but you just are not aware of these processes that take place, and you think that you are a
This is a very, very, very heavy subject matter that I'm trying to relay here to you guys. So please try to just listen carefully to what I'm saying. I'm saying that most individuals believe that they are just one self. They are made up of the soul or whatever it is, and that is that. And they believe that this soul does not change. They believe that the soul is permanent. They believe that that is what is going on. However, according to the Buddhist is saying that nothing is permanent. We are made up of all of these different parts, and these parts are constantly changing. They are constantly shifting, but we are not aware of these parts because and none of these parts are permanent. And so this is a huge, huge difference again, why the belief systems are completely different in the East from the West. But then again, try your very best to pay as much as possible attention, as much as possible to this deep, very deep, deep concept called the five aggregates.
Self, but in actuality, the Buddhists would say that these five aggregates make up the self or the non-self. And this again can only be found out when you meditate. You cannot, there is no way around this. The Bible, Jesus, when Jesus talked about be still, know that I am God. When you see scriptures talking about Jesus going into the mountains, praying in the mountains, that is him talking about introspection. That is Jesus talking about meditation. That is Jesus going into the mountains and looking deep into his mind, into the psyche, into his the spiritual self, if I may say. So this can only be achieved in meditation. Prayer cannot achieve this. Unfortunately, prayer is again, whereas you are looking externally for something, for an answer, for a solution to your problems or whatever the case may be. But meditation is more of an eternal practice, which is why what I'm talking about, to find, to believe and to not to believe, but to know that this non-self and the false self, the ego, is just a masquerade, a mask that the ego wears, that it tells you that, and we need this, we need this. Don't get me wrong, we all need this false self to exist because.
And like I said, also that's another big difference again in the West. We tend to rely on prayer. We pray and we get on our knees and we look outwardly. We express our feelings towards something that we consider to be outside of ourselves. We pray to a deity, a being, or an entity, whatever we want to call this thing that we call God. We tend to believe that this God is somewhere else other than inside of ourselves. So when we do pray, we are giving our energy external attention, thinking that we are communicating with something outside of ourselves, which is a complete different uh, practice than meditation. Meditation is more so going within the self, not looking for anything outside of the self, trying to find all of the answers or whatever it may be that we're trying to find. We're trying to find that from within. So that is a huge, huge difference again. Again, Buddhist, Hinduism, and things of that sort tend to put more emphasis on internal practices such as meditation and so forth and so on, versus prayer, again, looking outwardly to find the solution to our answers.
Without this false self, we wouldn't, we wouldn't do anything. We would be pretty much, I don't know, it's not, I can't think of the word I want to say right now, but we need this false self to exist. But the Buddhist is basically trying to get you to not to acknowledge that the true self, and to just use the false self in a sense to function in everyday life, but not become attached to the self like most individuals do.
So what I said also was that we have something what we call the ego in psychology and so forth. And most individuals get the word ego uh, confused in reference to when we hear this, when we say oh, somebody has a big ego and all that, we tend to think of this person as being flamboyant and arrogant and cocky, things of that sort. However, when we use the word ego in a spiritual sense, when we're talking about ego from like a Buddhism perspective, we're talking about the false self, the false identity. The teacher, I am a teacher, that would be considered the mask that you wear. I am a father, that would be considered a mask that you wear. I am a student, that is the mask that you wear. I am a cousin, a aunt, or whatever, a helper, or whatever, firefighter, whatever it is that you say that you are, that is considered in a spiritual sense, all of those titles are considered the ego, the false self. And so, from a Buddhist perspective, none of these masks that we wear, be I am a male, I am a girl, I am a all of these things, even our sex, I am black, I am white, I am Asian, I am Caucasian, I am African. All of these things are the masks that cover up the non true self. So the true self is actually the non self in the West, sorry, in the East. However, in the West, the true self is considered the titles: I am this, I am that, I. So I just want to help you guys understand the difference, how we can differentiate the difference between these these religious and spiritual beliefs.
So again, back to the five aggregates, and the five aggregates are uh, form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And again, these are the five aggregates. This is a process that takes place within the body, and it happens so smoothly and so almost uninterrupted. We don't really notice that it happens, but uh, everything happens for Buddhists also, cause and effect. This is a big thing. Everything, nothing happens without a cause. So anyhow, let's get back to the five aggregates because I'm kind of getting off track. So the five aggregates again: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. And these five aggregates is what makes up the human, the self, the non-self. The non-self is what the person that we think we are is made up of these five aggregates. And to make because this is a very difficult. You notice I'm hesitating right now because I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this because for someone in the West, this is almost somewhat uh, uncomprehensive. We cannot comprehend this concept of not being the non-self. This is something that is not really common in the West. So almost anything you say would be hard for someone to understand unless they again practice the meditation, they go within and so forth. But until that happens, this would usually sound like gibberish or garbage. So that's why I'm kind of a little hesitant trying to figure what best to say. So again, but to give an example I could think of about which would describe the five aggregates best is, for example, a car. When you look at a car, when we see a car driving down the street or sitting parked or whatever, we just look at the car as a whole. We don't look at the car and we don't say the wheel, there's the steering wheel, that's the tire, there are the seats. We don't say that's the hood, that's the back trunk. We label the car. When we see a car, we label the car as a whole. We don't pick out the parts of the car, just like a chariot. One example the Buddhists use frequently is a chariot. You know, you have the wheels and you have the frame and all of these other things. We don't tend to look at, when we see an individual, we don't say, oh, that's the leg, that's the eye, that's the feet, that's the, we just look at the individual and say, hey, that's Bob, that's Jim, that's Jeff, that's so and so. That's what we normally say. We don't separate the parts of the individual. We tend to just look at the individual and say that as the individual as a whole. So which brings me to the point again, the five aggregates, because it happens so simultaneously and so smoothly, we do not see the parts, we do not see the form, we don't see the feeling, we do not see the perception, we don't see the mental formations, and we don't see the consciousness, which are all processes that takes place in the brain. And and I would say this. Now, this is very uncommon even for science. Science usually don't believe.
Now, like I was saying again, like I said, this concept that I'm talking about here, it's very common in the East. Most all individuals in the East have heard this concept before. I would say 99.9% of the individuals have grew up hearing some type of belief system that has something like what I'm talking about, the non-self and so forth. Just like most individuals in the West have grown up hearing about God or Christianity, that's very common. The individuals in the West, sorry, in the East, they have been programmed or grew up hearing these type of uh, terminologies. However, individuals in the West talking about the five aggregates and the self being broken up into different parts, making up one smooth process. This is not a normal something for individuals in the West to comprehend. This sounds like gibberish. But again, I am here to just educate and to inform and sometimes entertain as well. So again, this is something that most individuals is not familiar with. But again, you would even see, like I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about science perspective about it as well. But again, this concept is not a normal way of thinking in our normal traditional religious Abrahamic faith beliefs as well.
Believe in any type of woo-woo or type of miraculous thing. Science don't believe in things of that sort. However, science would even agree and say that the mind is the self is made of environmental factors and all of these other factors. Even science would even agree with the Buddhists. This is done. That is very rare. If you see the scientists believe, agree with you, that is a huge thing. The science does not promote God, or they don't promote any other supernatural type of thing. However, many of them would agree that the self is made up of many different components. Some would even say the mind, this comes from the brain, electrical wiring, and so forth and so forth. However, that is not what the Buddhists are saying. I'm just saying that science would, lean more on the Buddhist concept of the five aggregates being more accurate than any other religious belief that exists, such as the soul and other spirit and things of that nature. So again,
So, like I was saying, so we know that science is a completely different uh, animal when it comes down to spirituality and different beliefs and so forth. Science do not believe in any type of, for the most part, supernatural type of belief system. Science don't know not normally science separate these things from fact. Most scientists do not believe in a god. Some scientists do, but they have to separate their belief systems from their work because science do not believe in ghosts. Science don't believe in God. Science do not believe in any type of supernatural type of spiritual type of uh, entities and things of the sort. However, the science would believe or accept the Buddhist concept more than any other belief systems. Science would accept that that the human is made up of different parts, environmental factors. We all made up of different things, our culture and all these things and so forth. So science would agree with the Buddhists more than any other religious belief because the Buddhist is not taking a more like they're not taking a woo perspective. They are kind of saying that the body is the human or the mind is made of made up of practical parts, different things, consciousness and things of that sort. But science again would agree with the Buddhists before they believe in any before they agree with Christianity or Islam or any other type of Abrahamic faith. Science would not agree with their particular God or the soul or things of that sort. So the Buddhists, that is very uncommon for the scientists to believe or not believe, but to agree with any type of religious, spiritual belief or practices. But they do, however, would consider the Buddhists to be more accurate than any other religious belief system. Just keep that in mind.
Again, science leans more towards this Buddha concept being an accurate representation of the true self as well. So back to this five self, this five aggregates, the non-self. Like I said, the non-self is an illusion, and that is the goal of the Buddhists when they talk about enlightenment, is to recognize that we are living in the matrix. The Bible says, Jesus said, "Be ye in the world, but not of the world." And the Bible constantly, and Jesus constantly talks about the flesh, and we must deny the flesh, and so forth and so forth. So we see that there's many references as to uh, not believing so strongly in the false self, and realizing that this place we call reality is an illusion. And that illusion, I will get back to the five aggregates, because that is again the focal point of this video. And again, this illusion, this is also related to the five aggregates. We would say that another good example would be is to look at a video game. A video game, and let's use, for example, The Sims. The Sims is a perfect.
So before I go any further, so that's what I'm saying. So uh, these concepts that I'm talking about are very familiar, like I said, in the West, but however, in the East, sorry, in the East are very familiar, but in the West, they sound very, very foreign because they are foreign. So the Buddhists would be consider the self to be an illusion, like the movie, like the Matrix, like the everything that we see in the physical world, whatever it may be, the trees, the rocks, the birds, even our physical body, all of these things will be considered an illusion. They fall under, they would call Maya, the illusion, the false self. And so in the West, we are attached to these things. We are attached to the body, the false self, the car, our house, our clothes, our jewelry, our money. All of these things inside the Buddhism spiritual practices would be considered illusions. And so the goal of the Buddhists and all of these other Eastern philosophies and belief systems and spiritual practices is to eliminate the belief of believing in the false self. And so we're starting to, this is starting to, I'm starting to build some type of foundation to understand why Jesus does not believe in God, because again, Jesus knew who he was. Jesus did not believe that he was the body. He did not believe that he was the false self. He knew who he was, and that is what we're talking about, knowing who we are. So Jesus did not have to believe in God because Jesus knew exactly what he was from a spiritual perspective. He knew he was not the flesh. He knew he was none of these things. He knew that the world was an illusion. And so most of us do not notice, so we are pretty much in the dark.
Example, The Sims, because it's more like realistic. People go to work, they go to school, they cook, they party, they drink, they do whatever they do, they smoke. The Sims is a more realistic uh, multiplayer game. So it's all you can think, any game, Mario Brothers, any game. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that what is going on with the false self, the illusory self, is that most individuals do not consider themselves to be characters in a video game. They consider themselves to be real characters in the real world. And the concept of the non-self will be most related to this video game analogous, as to say that the character in the game, Sims, Mario, whatever game you could think of, you believe that that is you. You are not, you do not know that you are the character in the game. You are not aware that you are not the, you're not aware that everything in the game is not real. And that is what I'm talking about. That is what we're referring to as the matrix. And we are all in the matrix. We are all in this thing they call Maya, the illusion, the dream state. me, you, your cousin, every single person you see is trapped in this illusion. There's not one person in this illusion that is not a part of this matrix, this illusion. However, it is the goal of the Buddhists is this enlightenment is to at least be aware that you are trapped in this illusion. It is like a prisoner who is locked up in jail, who, say, for example, better choice, Plato's cave. For those of you know anything about philosophy, you have something called Plato's cave.
And so, like I was saying again, so having the understanding of the illusion is what the Buddhists put emphasis on, the Hindus and so forth, having an understanding that we are living in some type of matrix, some type of illusory world. Like they said, The Sims would be a good example, a game type of, we are like more so like game characters. But again, like I said, again, this may sound like some type of crazy talk to individuals who are attached to the false self. If you are attached to your body, you're attached to your identity, you're attached to your title. I am a male, I am a female, I am a uh, barber, I am a janitor, I am this, I am that. If you are physically, psychologically, and emotionally attached to the body, it is very most likely, highly unlikely that you would be able to break free from this illusion. And that is why, like I said, if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So that is what the Buddhists, they put all of their emphasis on for the most part. First and foremost, understanding who you are and what you are, so that you could break free from this illusion of this illusory world. The Bible spoke a lot about it as well, talk about the false, the reality, and different things of that sort. Be in the world, but not of the world, and things of the sort. Not storing up our treasures here on earth, and things of that sort. And so the Bible put a lot of emphasis on not putting too much emphasis on this physical body and this physical place, because the Bible also puts a lot of emphasis talking about this too shall pass. And so therefore, that is what the Buddhists try to put a lot of their emphasis on, try to get individuals to understand that this is the illusory self, the illusory body, and everything that we see in the world is an illusion they call Maya, and the goal is to break free by first acknowledging who you are, and only then, when you acknowledge who you are, you could then go to deeper levels of understanding about yourself and the true nature of this thing we call God, which is not a part or separate from ourselves. But I will get deeper as I go on, because I don't want to jump the gun. Because again, I haven't seen this video. I don't know anything about the video. I'm just kind of just uh, going off the top of the dome. Because like I said, I'm about to talk about this concept or this philosophy called Plato's cave.
And Plato's cave is uh, talking about individuals who was born from birth and they was in this cave below the earth, and they was chained down, their necks was held straight, and there was some type of shadowy figure on the screen, and they saw these figures on the screen. And again, I'm not here to teach philosophy, but you could go and look it up, Plato's cave, and you could get a much better idea of what I'm talking about. But the individuals, they see those images on the screen, those shadows, and because they were in this state of mind, this place all their lives, they do not know anything else. So they believe the images on the wall is the real deal. And that is what is going on with us as well. We are just like the individuals in the cave who are tied and bound to this false reality, this false matrix, and we believe that the images that we see in front of us every day is reality. However, according to the Buddhists, according to the concepts of Maya and Samsara, this is not real. You are in the game again. You believe that you are the player. You're not aware that you are the player. You are associating yourself with the character of the game. So if you believe you're the character of the game, you could never escape. You could never even technically you could never even know God per se, because you are in the game. You are a character, and this God or whatever this thing you're talking about, this is outside of this matrix. And the only way that you can come in contact with this God or this thing you call God is to realize that you are trapped in this illusion, that the self is not real, and everything else is again a part of the matrix. And when you find this or come to this understanding, which they call enlightenment, then you would be able to look beyond this illusion and get in contact with whatever there may be outside of this game, if I may say.
So, very, very interesting fact. Uh, like I said, I spoke about Plato's cave. And for those who may not know, Plato's cave is an old philosophical idea that we are trapped in the illusion in some type of matrix, like a game. Like I said, like The Sims. Consider ourselves again. I am not saying again that these things are accurate. These are all allegorical ideas, philosophical ideas to help individuals to expand their mind, because the only way you could know something or teach something is if you use words, and you have to use analogies, and the same way the Bible uses stories about Sodom, Gomorrah, and Noah's Ark, and all of these different things to make their point and get the message across. Any type of teaching, there has to be words have to be used, and the teacher has to use stories and allegories to make his point. So again, Plato's cave is just one of those allegorical ideas used to help the students to understand the concept of an illusory world as much as possible. So according to Plato's cave, again, not saying that this cave is a real cave or is true, we are just using the cave to get the idea as close as possible to be understood by the mortal mind, because we can only understand things through pictures and ideas and concepts and so forth and so on. Abstract ideas must be told in the form of symbols and objects and things of that sort. So back to Plato's cave. So Plato's cave is example saying that we are just like the game characters living in the game, but picture ourselves in a cave, and we were born in a cave, and we were tied up. Our necks were chained, and we were chained to the ground, and we were looking at a wall, and this wall showed shadows, and we only saw the shadows of this wall go by, and people were walking by, and objects were coming by a shadow. It's like we're sitting down in a movie theater, and we were born in front of a movie screen, and we only saw shadows, and we didn't know anything else. We never came out of this cave. We never went in the outside world. We never saw trees. We never saw a cat. We never saw a dog. And the only thing we ever saw was a shadow, or the shadows that were placed on the wall. And because we were tied down from birth, so what would happen is we would naturally assume, we would naturally believe that this world that we're looking at on the wall, the shadows were real. We would naturally assume that these images was the real world. And so that what Plato's cave was all about, was trying to some individual, one individual broke free from that cave and saw the real world and so forth. But I think I'm jumping the gun. But the goal in Buddhism is to realize that the objects that we're seeing is not real. We are like characters in the video game. We are like characters in Plato's cave, and it is impossible to know anything outside of the cave, outside of the game, because we believe that we are real characters. It's like the Sims character thinking that it is real, or you are whatever game character you could think of, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, whatever it may be. Just imagine the character in the game thinking that it is real, not realizing that there is somebody outside of it playing the character. There's somebody that has a joystick playing the character, making the character move, making the character jump. But the character does not notice in the game. It only believes everything that it sees around it. In The Sims, it believes that the house that it's in is real, the room that it's in is real, the characters in the game is real. All the characters in the Sim game thinks it's real, and that is what the Buddhist is saying, that everything that we see, we believe to be real. And the goal is to break free from this illusion. But the only way we could break free from this illusion is to know that we are not real characters. So therefore, it is impossible for you to even know God or whatever that you may be calling God, because you believe that you are real when you are not real. So the first fundamental flaw is having a false idea or the wrong concept of who you truly are. Until you know who you are, what you are as a sim character, you cannot know anything to be real. You're just hoping and wishing and praying, but you are just doing all of this in vain, because you, again, you think that you are real, but you don't even know that you are just a game character or one of the characters in Plato's cave.
So think of it from this perspective, like imagine you are trapped in this game, this illusion, this game, but we go to work, you do all these things you're doing, and you think that you are actually a real human being. You believe that you are this character, eating, drinking, partying, having sex, whatever it is you think that you're doing. This is not an easy illusion to escape. I don't want you to think that this is something that you could just wake up one morning and say, "Wham, that is that," and I see through it. No, this takes a lot of diligence. This takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of introspection. This takes a lot of looking, a lot of searching, seeking to find the truth. You would not come to this understanding by accepting the things that you are told to be true. And if you do not go any further and look any further, it is very most likely, highly, that you would never, ever, ever, ever find the truth. And that is what they call, again, samsara, the wheel. You would just come back again. And there's a big difference between rebirth and reincarnation. Hindus promote reincarnation. Even there's many, I would assume, I would say there are references to reincarnation in the Bible also. When Jesus came back after the death, burial, resurrection, he came back. He appeared to be somebody else, a gardener, and other times he appeared to be somebody else. He did not, and the individuals didn't know who he was, but he was Jesus. But those are small references. Some may argue, some individuals may argue, spiritual uh, leaders may argue and say those are not examples. But if someone coming back died to come back and it's somebody else, I don't know what else to say. If it's not whatever you want to say it is, that's what it is. Because again, trying to pull someone out of the matrix, out of delusion, is not an easy task, because the average individual is gonna go kicking and screaming to the grave. That is why, again, this illusion is not something that is easily broken. Again, just like the Plato's cave example, allegory, when one individual got free from the bondage and he went outside of the cave, he crawled up into the real world. He saw the real sun. He saw real flowers. He saw the reality of the real world. And when he saw this, he went back to try to explain to the individuals in the cave what he saw. And they was like, "You must be mad. You got to be crazy." And that is exactly what's going on right now. I am like one of those individuals who have came out of the cave, who went and who saw the light, who saw the trees, the real sun, the real moon. Now I'm coming back trying to go into the cave, trying to enter the cave, trying to open the minds of some individuals, and most individuals will most likely reject this concept as well. Because again,
Like I said, this the ideas that I'm trying to portray here is not an easy task to accept, or it's not an easy task to understand or even grasp if you have had not merely traditional religious or spiritual beliefs. So again, if this was easy, everyone would be doing it. If the illusion was something easy to break, everyone would be doing it. Just like the movie The Matrix with Neo and Lawrence Fishburne. Uh, Neo was one of the few. I mean, there were many that broke free, but Neo was considered the chosen one because he was so unique and rare, and he was considered to be the one. He was considered technically to be the savior, just like Jesus, Joshua Christos, coming to save mankind the same concept applied in the Matrix as well. Neo was considered to be Jesus, breaking free out of the Matrix and being sent back to save mankind. But again, this illusion was not made to be easily broken. You're not was supposed to come here and just see through the illusion as easy as that. There are some individuals who came here, some young kids who've came here and they have been able to say, hey, you know what, I remember past lives and so forth and so forth. But again, that is very few, far in between. That many individuals who are born having an idea that they are in an illusion, but for the average person, for the most part, this is not something that you just come into and you can crack the code like that. This is not island luck.
Again, this concept, this is all we know. We know the matrix. We were born in the matrix. So I do not expect us to believe anything else. I don't expect us to look and say that, oh, this is not real and all. I'm not saying that your experiences is not real. Again, I'm just saying this is part of Maya. This is a part of the dream state. This is part of the illusion. This is what makes the illusion so powerful. If the illusion was easily broken, everyone would be doing it. But it is not. And I didn't always have this understanding. I didn't always believe the things what I believe or know the things I know. That's like I said before. I think I said in my video and earlier, I do not believe in believing. I am not a person that believes in believing. I believe in the only things I do believe in is something that I believe that could be possible to some having a logical understanding of it possibly being possible or plausible, and I have some evidence to believe it, but I cannot prove it. Those are the things that I believe. I believe in only things that I cannot prove, but I believe somewhere logically it could make sense. It makes sense that it's possible that this could happen or it's plausible, but I do not believe in believing. So again, back to this analogy of the five aggregates. Again, so this process again takes place so smoothly that the average individuals, just like seeing the car, does not see this process broken down bit by bit, bit by bit. That is why, again, meditation, you have to meditate. You have to go and do some type of deep introspection. You have to do mindful meditation. You have to watch the breath. You have to watch the thoughts. And you have to do this continuously until you come to some experience and realize that the self that you believe exists is truly not there at all.
So, like I was saying again, this coming to this conclusion will take some dedication, will take some time, will take some practice, will take some deep introspection. However, the average person will not go to such degree and look into the self. They would not take the time to talk about meditation. And far as I'm concerned, most individuals in the West, when they hear things like meditation, the word meditation, they think that the word meditation is of the devil. And again, my people perish because of lack of knowledge, and it mainly has to do with ignorance because the ignorance was just passed down from one generation to the next, and the average person just not would never ever take the time to do self introspection to find the truth out because they believe what they were told, they believe what they see, just like the movie, just like the Matrix. When Neo found that he was living a lie, and he's like, wow, are you telling me that my job was not real in my neighborhood and or everything that I was doing was an illusion? He was shocked to really find out the truth that he was living in a dream world, according to Lawrence Fishburne. And that is the same thing what I'm saying. Most individuals would rather live inside of the dream world and live in the illusion rather than wake up. And that is a fact. That is why many individuals would rather just, drink the Kool-Aid and just stay asleep. So that's I'm saying rather take the blue pill. They would rather take the blue pill versus the red pill, and that's what I'm talking about. Most individuals literally do not care to know the truth. They would just rather go on with their lives, whether it be true or false or not. They're not going to take the time to look into it at all. It just is going to come off as just foolishness, crazy talk to the average person in the West. But again, that is a big mistake. That is why most individuals are in the position that they're in today because they do not take the time to look and know who they are so they can go into much deeper levels of spiritual progress and self-realization as well.
So again, back to the aggregates. So we have form, feeling, perception, uh, mental formations, and consciousness. And I would say another good example would be, let's say, for example, I'm just going to use example, a simple example, most everyone would maybe could understand. Everyone should be able to understand. So form has to do with the physical form, the body, eyes, the mouth, the five senses, or the six senses. In my case, the seven senses. And the seven senses in my case, but the six senses, that is why this my channel, my service is called Seven Seals Astrology Prophetics. And again, this is astrology channel, but I'm promoting the seven senses as well. So, but anyhow, so the five senses or the six senses, dealing with taste, touch, and so forth. When we see something and the eye comes in contact with something, you see something that is what they call considered form, or you taste something, or you touch something, or you feel something. Something has to do with the physical body, the physical world, something tangible. That is when they're referring to as form. And then obviously feeling has to do with feeling a certain way, whether it be pleasant, unpleasant, or having a neutral feeling. And then perception is simply having an understanding of what that thing is that you see. To perceive something, whatever you perceive. You see an apple, you see an object, and you look at that object, and then your mind says, "Oh, that's an apple." So you perceive that thing as being an apple, a tree, a house, a car. That is your perception. And again, all of these things are part of the five aggregates. And then you have mental formations after you see something, and then you feel a certain way about it, and then you have a perception, then you have a perception about it, then you have some type of mental formation, whereas you start to think about it, and you maybe might be have a certain emotion might come about. You might label a thing as being, makes you happy, sad, or you don't like it, or makes you angry, whatever the case may be. You form some type of opinion or some emotional, you give some emotional feedback, and that would be the mental formation. And then you have consciousness. Obviously, consciousness is uh, being aware of that thing that you was looking at, the car, the apple, the house, or whatever. And however, which brings me to another point. I'm going to get back to the aggregates because that's what we're talking about. Which brings me to another point. The
And I just tried to give you guys a very brief idea of the aggregates, but you see it's a very complex concept, but it happens so quickly and it happens so smoothly, we do not necessarily see it happening. You know what I'm saying? We don't, like I said, when we see a car drive down the street, we do not break the car down, we do not dissect the car down individual by individual parts. We do not say, there the wheel goes by, oh, there's the door, there's the windshield, there are the wipers, there are the seats. We do not look at the car as individual parts. When we see the car go by, we just say that is a car. So the same thing happens when we look at certain things, we see certain things, we touch certain things, we taste certain things. There is a process that goes on in the body, in the mind, and it happens so quickly we just automatically assume that it's just one smooth process. Like when we are watching a movie on the video, for example, when we are watching a movie in a theater, they have a particular a movie playing on the screen. There are picture frames being played on the screen. Even this video that we're watching right now, or this on this channel, the images are broken up into frames per second, and it's happening so fast that the eye we cannot see that each pixel is moving at a particular speed and a particular rate, and it just looks really fluent, just like when we look at objects, we see somebody walking down the street. We don't understand that these objects are broken down by the retina, goes in the back of the brain, and We see you have the visual cortex and all of these different visual apparatus going on in the mind and the brain and working hand in hand. We cannot see the process taking place because it happens so quickly, and so we just think that the thing that we're seeing is outside of us, when actually all of the images that we're seeing is located in the back of the brain. That is a perfect example of an illusion. We look at things, we see something, whatever it is that we're seeing that appears to be outside of us. We do not know what it is that we're seeing, because the thing that we're seeing could be a projection on a screen. We do not know what it is. I know it sounds crazy because, again, only those who have some type of understanding of what I'm talking about will understand what I'm saying, because we do not know what we are actually looking at. We could be like the individuals in Plato's cave. We could be looking at a movie screen. We could have our brains in a vat. There could be so many different things going on, and we think it to be real, and we think that the movie that we're watching is actually a literal movie when none of it is actually real. Again, that is why we have to study, like I said earlier, to show thyself to be approved.
The idea of the consciousness is a very, very, very deep, deep, deep concept that is misunderstood in most cases. Most individuals get consciousness confused with the mind. And in reference to consciousness, scientists can't even tell you what consciousness is, because that is how complex it is. And no one really they have something what they call the hard questions. I'm not a scientist, but I think that has something to do with when you see an object and then something, they can't find that object in the brain. There's no parts of the brain where that object is showing up in the brain somewhere, some type of sensory mechanism. That's what they call a hard problem. So but anyhow, let's get back to consciousness. Some individual might be confused with consciousness and the mind, and I would say, to give you guys a little brief idea, I would say consciousness would be considered like uh, consciousness. The mind would be like a stage. I think that would be good, because the concept is it's a simple concept. It's very difficult for the average person to grasp. So I'm just thinking of the most simple way to put it. So consciousness would be, the mind would be a stage, and everything that comes up on that stage is the thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, or whatever they may be. You might have anything that you think of, that you could think of. You know, feeling a certain way, the objects that you see, the thoughts that you have, all that is taking place on the stage of the mind. Again, think of the mind as a stage, and think of consciousness as a spotlight, that shines awareness onto that object that's on the stage. So consciousness is like the foundation. Consciousness is like the void that is usually associated in scriptures. A lot of, or if you look at a lot of history, scriptures talk about this void and things coming from the void. That would be in reference to consciousness, this empty space where everything emerges from, and this silent place and so forth. Because again, consciousness is like, consider it a like a painter going to paint on a canvas. A blank canvas would be consciousness, and the painting that the painter puts on the screen, on the canvas, would be kind of the mind. If he paints an apple, or he paints a fruit basket, or whatever he paints on that screen, that would be on that canvas, that would be considered the mind. And the mind again has to do with whatever he paints on that canvas would be, the canvas would be consciousness, and whatever he paints on the screen would be the mind. And then the consciousness uses its awareness again as a spotlight to shine on that, to illuminate the object. So when you look at something, you see something, and then that is on the stage of the mind. And when you think about that thing, it is consciousness shining its light of awareness on that thing, which brings it to your awareness that you are looking at a particular thing. That this is an apple, this is a hat, this is a cat, this is a dog, whatever it is consciousness bringing that thing to your awareness. So without consciousness, you could not be able to see anything or know anything or believe anything. That is why some most individuals would consider consciousness to be fundamental. So
I tried my best. I tried. It was a very heavy concept. I tried to, because like I said, consciousness is not a very easy concept to understand. As scientists, like I said, the scientists don't even know what it is. You understand me? So the conscious, when we're talking about consciousness, you could hear all type of different definitions and so forth, but no one really knows what it is. You know what I'm saying? Because it's something that it is fundamental. It's kind of like uh, now that I'm looking back at it now, it's like again like the video game analogy, whereas you might be the Sims, a character in the video game. You might be going to work, cooking, cleaning, having a good time, partying, or whatever the case may be. Consciousness would be considered like the program that's outside of the game, running the game. I don't know. I'm just saying the program that's making all of the things appear, making all of the characters appear. And so the characters inside of the game, it's literally impossible for the characters to know the program that's running outside of the game, because the characters live inside the game and the characters are not aware that they are characters. So the goal of awakening or enlightenment is to realize that you are the character in the game. The game is rigged or fake or false or as in the Matrix, and there's something outside of the game greater, which is the program which is making the game run, and then you realize that you are actually a part of the program, the ones and the zeros, and so therefore you would be considering. So it'd be, when we look at it from that perspective, it'd be like individuals or the game characters thinking that they are the game characters, thinking that they are the real characters, and that they are praying outside of themselves, but not knowing what they're praying to this thing they call God, but they don't know that they are actually a part of the game. They are literally a part of God because they are made up of the program, which is God, but because they don't know what they are separating themselves from the program, and they are praying to the program, calling it God, thinking that the program is separate from themselves. That's a very uh, brief, crude idea of another way of putting it, to say why you cannot know God if you do not know you are also a part of God, a part of the program, but you think that God is separate from you. The Sims character thinks that it is separate from the program. So you see, it's a very complex situation, and so the goal of the Buddhist and enlightenment is to first realize what you are not, and then understand what you are made of and what you are not made of, and go from there.
consciousness is just the ability to be aware of something, and the mind is the tool used to where that stage where that thought or that feeling or that idea has the opportunity to display itself, and consciousness brings awareness to that thought or that feeling. I hope that makes sense. I kind of said it in so many different ways, as much as I could think of, to kind of get you guys to understand the difference between the mind and consciousness. And because, again, living in the matrix, we are not aware of the separation of the mind and consciousness. And because of this lack of awareness, we tend to put everything into one group, and we tend to say that this is I am my thoughts, and this is me, I am my feelings, and I am this and I am that, and which is incorrect, because like I said, back to the form, so back to the five aggregates. So like I said, uh, you have form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and then we have the consciousness. So a real life example of that would be, I'm just going to use this example. It's another example. Let's say you're walking down the street, be you're a guy or a girl, you're walking down the street, I'm gonna use a guy just to make it, so I'm just sticking to the script. So you're a guy, and you see a girl, you see a girl. So therefore your eye, yeah, again we're talking about form right now. Your eye came in contact with something in the real world, and now that is one of your sensory mechanism is activated, and you see this girl, and then you start to have some type of feeling. You have a feeling. You say, wow, either you might be excited, you might get excited, depends on, you might see, you might say, oh wow, this, you start to feel a certain way, you know what I'm saying? Excited, or you might be neutral, you might don't even care how you feel about a girl, or this person might make you sad, whatever, how it is. You see this person, so that would be the form, and then so you would have a feeling about this person, and then your perception would kick in, and you would say, in most cases, you would label this person, you would say, man, this girl is very attractive, this is, wow, this is a dime piece, or wow, this is a body, or what I'm saying, whatever it is that you label, that this is your perception kicking in right now. Then after that you would go into mental formation. You would say, wow, I wonder if she has a boy. You start to imagine now. You start to think about things. Imagine if she have a boyfriend. I wonder, wow, she look like she has money. She look like she doesn't look. You look at her attire, and you look at her from head to toe, and you just come up. You make all these mental formations in your mind. Ideas about her. She looks like she likes money. She knows she doesn't look. She looks like a nice girl. She looks like a church girl. Whatever, you make all these mental assumptions about her, and then it is consciousness, again, the five aggregate, that allow you to 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 have all of these feelings and this awareness of this girl, and all of these things that went on. And again, those were on the stage of your mind, and it was consciousness, and would shone the light on this girl, and shone the light on your mind, to let you realize that this girl was attractive, and she looked a certain way, and then you thought about, wonder if you should go talk to her and all that. But this process takes place so fast, you do not really know how fast this takes place, and that's why you believe it is you. You believe it is you thinking. You believe it is you making decisions. You believe it is you who is doing all these things. But to make another point, it cannot be you, because if it really was you, and you was this fixed, permanent uh, figure that you think that you are, if you were the body, hypothetically speaking, if you really were the body, and you had some control, the thing that you say that you are, you don't have any control over any of these things. You have no control over your form, your body. You have no control over your feelings. You have no control over your perceptions. You have no form over your thoughts and your emotions. You have no control over your consciousness. So everything that you say that you are, you have no control.
So that is a very, very powerful fact as well. Now I want you guys, like I said, you could guys go back and watch the video. The link will be in the description again. But like I said, everything that you say that you are, you have no control over it. If you had some control, you would be, if you wore that thing, you would be able to control that thing. But you cannot control anything. So that is what I'm saying. The process, when you see the girl and you saw that, you thought she was sexy and all that, or the guy, you thought he was handsome or attractive or whatever the case may be, you think you have all of these feelings and these ideas and all of these emotions and things going on so fast that you believe that you are the one thinking that you are the one making these things happen. But a lot of this came from conditioning, which you, some cultures, a certain body type might be considered attractive. Some cultures, a certain complexion would be considered attractive. Some certain cultures, the same thing that would be considered attractive in one culture will not be attractive in another culture. One complexion would be attractive in one culture, will not be attractive in another culture as well. So things are, we are really conditioned by our environment, our friends, our family, and the condition that the world that we came into, our surroundings. Again, whatever we were taught. That is why I said we are made up of all of these different belief systems. Nothing that you believe in is permanent. You can change based on your surroundings, your belief systems. Everything about you changes. There's nothing that is a fixed, permanent self. Everything about you gets old. Your mind changes, your thoughts changes, your feeling changes, your body changes. Every single thing that you consider to be yourself changes. So only thing is left is to find this non-self. That's what we're talking about. The only thing that really exists is the non-self. And what is that non-self? That's what we're talking about. That is why, again, this whole video was about Jesus. Jesus knowing all of these things about himself, having an understanding that he was not the body, having an understanding he was none of these physical things, having an understanding that the world was an illusion, having an understanding that he was one with God. He was one with this consciousness. He was one with this no thing. He was one with this non thing that we call God. But in most cases, that is not the way the average person thinks. The average person thinks of God as being a thing, not a non or no thing.
You have zero control. Because if you did have some control of yourself or over these things, you would not, it would not lead to suffering. You would not suffer voluntarily. If you were your body, you would be able to say, you would be able to say, uh, I would like to be taller. I would like to be shorter. I would like to have more muscles. I would like to be slimmer. I would like to be this or that. I would like to have more hair. You would, if you had, if you wore this thing, you would be able to have control over this thing. If you were your feelings, you would like, you would say, I don't want to feel sad anymore. That's enough. I want to feel happy. Most people would want to feel happy most of the time. And yes, even happiness, that's why nothing is permanent. That's why we need to feel sad sometimes. Again, that's what one of the concepts of Buddhists, nothing is permanent. Nothing lasts forever. There is no permanency in Buddhism. There's nothing that exists forever and ever and ever. It is just a state, something going from state to state, from one process to the next, from this process to that process. And it changes so smoothly, we're just not aware of it. So again, if you wore any of these things, if you wore your feelings, yes, you may not want to feel bad all the time. You may not want to feel good all the time. And you might say, sometimes you might say, okay, it's okay if I feel bad about this thing, someone died or whatever the case may be. And then after a period of time, you would have the ability to say, okay, enough is enough. I don't want to feel bad about this anymore. But that is not the case, because we have some people who grieve for a lifetime over certain things. Some people have died and they have left some people alive, and these people are still grieving years and years and years and decades later. Some people never get over certain things. So if you had control, why would you choose to suffer? Tell me, why would you choose to suffer? And that is the concept of purpose of Buddhists. One of the main precepts is suffering exists, and there's a solution to suffering. And so this is what the Buddhist is all about. The Buddhist is not saying that you would eliminate all these feelings, or you will eliminate these. These are the tools that understanding the non-self will give you the ability to not be so clingy and not be so attached to when something happens. Because when something happens to you, per se, you realize that it really didn't happen to you at all. It's just an experience that is happening. But
Now, this is some very, very heavy, heavy action that I'm talking about again. Like I was saying, again, like I said from the very beginning, the ultimate goal of Buddhism is to eliminate suffering. That is the goal in this lifetime. We're not talking about going to heaven or hell or anything of that sort. We are trying to eliminate suffering. And the root cause of suffering is because of not knowing thyself, because of believing in the false self, having all of these emotional attachments to the false self, having emotional attachments to the false reality. When something good happens, we feel good. When something bad happens, we feel bad, because we are attached to the outcome of certain things. We believe that this particular thing is going on in our life that is making us sad. But if we didn't know who we were, knowing that that thing has no effect on us at all, our suffering will diminish, and it actually will dissipate or eventually disappear. But again, this is at a different level of understanding, but that is the ultimate goal. I'm not saying that you're going to come to this realization overnight, but however, it can be done. Suffering does exist, and there is a solution to suffering, and suffering is also a choice. That is what we're talking about, eliminating suffering. Like I said, if you had the choice if you had some kind of control, you would be able to control your thoughts. If you were your mind, if you were your thoughts, you would be able to control what you think about, but you do not control your thoughts. You cannot control your thoughts. You do not control what you think about. If you were your body, you would say, hey, I want to lose weight, and that would be that. Hey, I want to gain weight, that would be that. If I want to be taller, I want to be shorter, that would be that. But no, you cannot do any of these things, which further confirms that you are literally none of these things, and you have almost next to no control over any of these things. It's like the Sims character in the game again. Consider yourself being the game character, and now the game character is being played by somebody outside of the game. The Sims character has no control in whichever direction it wants to go. It cannot go left or right or whatever, or jump or dance on its own. The player outside of the game is the one making all of the decisions for the game character. And that is what I'm saying to you guys. You are like the game character, and someone else or something else is making all of the decisions for you, but you think within yourself that it is you. And that is not the case according to the Buddhism. You are not making any decisions. You are not doing anything. You are somewhat more so of a placeholder. You are just experiencing all of these things for consciousness. If I'm saying it is consciousness having the experience of all of these things, and you are just the illusion of the self giving consciousness the ability to have the experience of these things. Yes, this is a very deep and heavy concept, but hey, this is what I'm talking about.
It didn't really happen to you because you are never the same person every minute of every second. You are changing. There are cells dying. There's all these things going on, a body process that's going on. You are not the same person that you was a year ago. You were not even the same person a minute ago. A minute ago, you had some idea that went away. A minute ago, you were now 1 minute closer to your death. You know what I'm saying? 1 minute ago, you're 1 minute older to your grave. You're not the same person. You never was the same person. You're not the same person from when you was 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So you are none of these things. I know this is a very difficult concept to grasp, the non-self, and I'm not expecting you to grasp anyone to grasp this concept right away off the bat. However, I am saying that this will take some time and some great introspection and some great searching and looking within yourself to come to this conclusion, because I too have not come, I didn't just come to this conclusion, and there's no way around using the word I. You notice I have to say I have to talk about, I have to say I when I'm going to do something, or I want this or I want that. But it's not that I'm saying that I just know the difference. I just know that this person that I call I is a fictitious, is a facade, is an ego. At least I know that. But some individuals, or most individuals, assume that they are this particular thing. They
And so that's what I'm saying. I said this earlier also as well, that there is no way around having an ego. The false self must exist in order for you to experience this reality. Despite the fact the false self may be an illusion, it may be part of the matrix. Without the false self, there is no experience. Without the false self, the consciousness or whatever it may be, whatever we call that thing, God, whatever it is that's having the experience through us, as us. This thing is acting as it we believe that we are ourselves, but according to Buddhism, this thing is acting as us, but we are confused thinking that we are ourselves. So without the false self, the thing that we call God or consciousness cannot have any experiences. So the goal is to at least realize what you are and what that thing is as well, and that there is no separation between you and that thing. So despite the fact, like I was saying, I may have come to the realization that I am not the false self. I am not the teacher. I am not the student. I am not the brother. I am not the cousin. I'm not the uncle. I'm not the father. I am not any of these things. However, the difference between me and most individuals is I know that I am none of these things. I accept that I'm none of these things, and I play my role. I play my part because I have no other choice. Because I am here. I cannot just walk out of reality. I cannot come out of the matrix. I cannot come out the Sims game, despite the fact I may believe or know that I am a character. I cannot do any of that. The Buddhists, they cannot escape the matrix because they are in the matrix. They still need to eat. They still need to sleep. They still need to take care of themselves. They still need to do whatever. You still need to go to work. You still need to, whatever you need to do in this matrix, you still have to do it. If you are like a Sims character and you say, hey, I'm not going to do anything, you cannot just stand there and do nothing. You have to do something despite the fact the matrix may not be real. That is a part of the game. You have to play the game no matter what. There is no escaping the matrix. But again, at least at voice, you could know that you are a game character, and then you still play the game to the best of your ability, and that will eliminate the suffering because the root cause of the suffering is playing the game, thinking that you are the real character, and thinking that the game characters other than yourself and the objects in the reality, sorry, in the game is real as well. So when you lose something in the game, whether it may be a job or whatever, and then you are so attached to it, that is when the suffering really comes about. Because if you're not attached to anything, how can you suffer? It is literally impossible, and it's also almost impossible to not be attached to anything. Again, that is why I said if it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But it is possible to have no attachments. There are people that are not attached to the world at all. That is why the Bible says, be ye in the world, but not of the world, and be ye transformed by the renewing of the mind. And that is what I'm trying to do right now, help individuals to renew the mind.
They call the I, the self, the false self, the illusory self, the ego, if I may say. So with that being said, I will end this video shortly. So I hope that helps you guys understand why Jesus did not believe in God, because Jesus continuously spoke throughout the scriptures stating that him and the Father was one. God and Jesus was one. And how many of us hear that scripture over and over? Many of us even believe in the birth, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, but we do not believe we are one with Jesus. We do not believe we are one with God. The Bible clearly states that you are the Son of God and you are of like Christ and all of this. You are sons and daughters of God, and you still believe that you are this dirt. You are made up of dirt. You just say you believe this because you was taught this, and this is what you believe. So if you believe that you're dirt, you could never ever know God because you believe that you are separate from God. And one of the things that you have to accept and realize that in order to know God rather than to believe in God is that you have to know thyself. You have to know that you are a part of this thing called God. Just like there's no separation between you and Jesus and God, there's no separation between you and God. The best example I could think of to bring this no separation thing to some clarity, when you think of a computer, I don't know how many people know anything about computers, but they have something what they call partition. When they partition a drive is when they basically break up a drive into many bits and pieces. So you might have one drive, a hard drive, a major drive, and then you could break that drive up into drive A, B, C, D. I'm not sure how many parts you could partition the drive into. However, when you partition the drive into those many different parts, there's still only one hard drive. It's not like you have 2, 3, 4 hard drives in the computer. You just have one hard drive broken up into many pieces. So which means that, yes, they are separate parts of the same one hard drive. And that is what the whole concept of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit is all about. Again, which usually would mean in esoteric would be Father, Son, and Mother, because there's always a male, female, and child. But for some reason, the Holy Spirit was transformed into, I don't know, a neutral thing. And throughout history, we know that the Spirit was usually associated with the female from the creation of Gaia's story. That was female, Mother Earth, Mother Nature. Gaia was a female. Then we have Isis, Osiris, and we have Horus, and we have the spirit. Then Osiris died. If I remember clearly, it was Isis, the spirit of Isis, that hovered over the body of the spirit, and then baby Horus is born. So again, the spirit is normally associated with a female. I'm going on a side tangent here, but that's something else I'm not talking about for the moment. And then you look at all the ancient scriptures in the Bible. It was Yahweh and El, if I remember clearly. I think they both had wives. They had wives, but those female deities was eliminated over time because.
And let me just backtrack for a second before it goes too far ahead. So, like I was saying, that's why I said the video, Jesus does not believe in God. Jesus does not have to believe in God because Jesus knows that there is no separation between him and God. Therefore, there is only God. That is the point that I'm making. It from an esoteric perspective, from a Buddhist perspective, there is only God. God is the only thing that exists. Nothing exists outside of God. Nothing exists outside of consciousness. And because it's consciousness is the thing that produces everything, everything that we see, touch, taste comes from consciousness. So, from a Buddhist or Hindu's perspective, God would be considered consciousness. That's why I said Jesus does not see any separation between himself and God, and he knows that, so therefore he does not have to believe in God. But you believe in God, you believe in Jesus, because you believe that you and God are separate. You, as a game character, The Sims, do not believe you and the program that made the game is the same. There is no separation between the program and the Sims character. There is no separation between the Windows program on your computers, Windows 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and the icons that you see on the screen. Everything that you see on the screen is a part of the Windows program. The program made up the icons on the screen, but you think that you're a separate character from the program of the Sims game. And that's what I'm trying to say to you guys is when you come to know who you are, you will know that there is no separation between you and God. Therefore, there will be no need to believe in a God because you would know that there is only God.
Of being a patriarch society, and the matriarchs decided to remove those deities. Ashura, if I remember clearly, was the female deity, the wife of El and Yahweh. But again, I'm going off on a side tangent. Those again are just talking about the aspects of the mind, the male and the female brain, and the positive and the negative aspects. Because there's always a positive, there's always a negative, there's always a right, and there's always a left. And that's what we're talking about, the Hermetic principle of polarity. So getting back to this concept again, where I left off. So if you are all of these things, if you are any of these things, you would be able to control these things, but you cannot. So therefore, you are not any of those things. And I would end this video soon, but I would say that there was one thing that I do believe. I would say, I believe this now. This is a belief. This is a belief that I have. This is not a fact. But however, this also relates to the Buddhist concept. We have something called birth, death, and rebirth. So we have what we call samsara. Samsara is the birth, the rebirth, whereas you have, when there's a death, you have the opportunity to, not reincarnation now. We're not talking reincarnation, we're talking about rebirth. Rebirth is different from reincarnation. Reincarnation is saying that the soul itself comes back and the soul itself is reborn into a different body, but the soul is consistently the same. And that is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about rebirth. Rebirth is something different. Rebirth is basically, whereas, for example, you have a candle. If you have a candle and you light that candle, and then you take that same flame, and then you use that flame to light a separate candle, a new candle, and that new candle is lit. So now, is that flame from the old candle, that flame from the old candle, is that new candle from the old fire, or is that the new fire? That is the question what I'm asking right now. So you take an old candle with an old flame, and then you light a new candle, and there's a new flame. So the answer would be there are different parts of that. There's that fire is part of the old fire, and then it's a new fire, but it's not really the same fire. So the rebirth is basically based on that same concept. You're not really the same person. You just basically a stream of consciousness that carries what they would call karma, and that's that karma that goes into what they would call a different life, a different form, if I may say. That is what the samsara is all about, being reborn or rebirth into a new, uh, a different frame, if I may say, a different frame, a different body, but not necessarily the same person. The soul, if I may say, the soul is not the thing that is passed on. The soul is the thing that it changes with, again, with karma, and karma is not necessarily punishment. Karma is not a bad thing. It is not uh it's not a bad thing. It is not like, you know, and most religious beliefs, you stand before God and you're judged, and then you go to heaven or you go to hell. No, that is not a Buddhist concept. Karma is basically the energy because again, energy cannot be destroyed or nor created. When you die, the energy basically is that energy is connected to consciousness, and that is transferred over into the next rebirth. So the
I know that was a lot. That was a lot. I kind of let it run on a little bit, but hopefully we got some idea of what I was talking about, because I was saying that I don't believe in believing. However, I was trying my very best to also explain what 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 is when you hear the Buddhists or the Hindus when they talk about rebirth and all that reincarnation, there is a big difference between rebirth and reincarnation. Reincarnation more so is stating like when you die, a part of you, specifically whatever your name is. Let's say your name is Bob. When you die, a part of Bob will remain, and a part of Bob will come back, and a part of Bob will exist. That is one type of concept, reincarnation. But rebirth is somewhat slightly different than reincarnation. Again, like I said, you guys have to do some research as well. And the majority from this point on, because again, this is like my fifth, sixth video, I will create quite a bit of spiritual subject to talk about as well. Before, again, I will talk about dating, I will talk about relationships, I will talk about a lot of different subject matters, I will talk about astrology. But again, I'm starting out with a foundation for this channel, talking about knowing thyself and who you truly are, or what you are, if I may say. So again, reincarnation is more so the concept of believing that someone, a part of you, will return. And I'm not saying again that I believe in any of these things per se, but however, I'm saying that if I were to believe in something, again, rebirth, like I said, I used the example of rebirth. If you take a candle and you light a new candle, a candle, that new fire, that new flame that comes from the new candle, is the fire a new fire, or is the fire a part of the old fire? Uh, Also, so the answer would be it's somewhat a part of both. It is a new fire, and it also is a part of the old fire, but it's not completely the old fire, and it's not completely the new fire. It's kind of like a little complex example, if I may say. But like, for example, another example would be a wave in the sea. When a wave, all of the waves may seem to appear to be separate. This would maybe a better example. All of the waves may appear to be separate waves, moving at certain space and distance and height and all that. However, all of the waves are a part of the same ocean. And then when you get it, or lake or river or whatever, and when you break it down even more further, all of the waves are all water. So the same water is the same, although the waves may appear to be different. They are all made up of the same water. So that is what I'm trying to say. Although we appear to be separate beings, you appear to be you, I appear to be me, and so forth and so on. But technically, just like the waves are part of the same water, we are all a part of the same consciousness. We are all a part of the same God. And the same way there's no separation between the waves and the water, there is no separation between Jesus and God, and there's also no separation between you, Jesus, and God. So therefore, the same way there's all the different separate waves appearing to be separate, but they are all a part of the only one water that exists. The same thing applies. You may appear to be separate from me. I appear to be separate from you. I appear to be separate from Jesus. I appear to be separate from God, but there's only one God appearing as many different waves and appearing as many different waters. So again, Jesus does not believe in God because he knows that he is God. The Buddhists do not use the word God per se. They do not think of God as being an entity per se. They see there's only God, nothing else but God. There are no separate waves. There's only the one water appearing to be many different separate waves. And that is what I would say. I believe, I am not saying this is a fact, but from my understanding, I would lean more on that being a belief that I have, not a fact. Not saying that this is the case, but this would be more so a fact because even science would say, energy, they have already established that they are all matters made up of atoms, and all atom is energy, and everything is energy, and many great minds such as Nikola Tesla and Einstein, all of those guys consider energy, matter, and frequencies to be the main fundamental big build-up or the main uh, fundamental particles, if I may say, that the universe is made up of energy. So, although things you may appear to be separate from the tree, you may be appear to be separate from the rocks, you may be appear to be separate from the cars, the birds, the bees, but all of these things are made of energy. So there's only one energy appearing as many different objects. So this is why I'm saying the same thing applies to us as well. And consciousness, we all appear to have different minds and different consciousness being separate, but there's only one consciousness, one God.
The energy that you died with automatically goes into this new formation, if I may say. Again, I'm not here to talk with some sorrow and all of that. I'm just trying to give you guys an idea of something that I believe. So back to what I was saying. So we all wonder why we do not know why we where we go after we die.
So, like I was saying, so as far as rebirth is concerned, after we die, we come back and so forth, because there's only one energy source, there's only one form of energy, and we are all made up of that same energy, that same source. It is fair to say that when we come back, or when a new, even when, let's say we don't even come back, let's say a new person is born, a new baby is born, that baby is made up of the same energy that you are made up of. When someone dies and a new person is born, there is no separate two type of energy. So we are all just one energy being recycled into different forms, different uh, different objects, if I may say, but still the one form or the one energy. That would be more so what I would be considered, what I believe to be true, based on not just my knowledge, wisdom, and understanding from through study, but based on scientific backgrounds, backing as far as the world and atoms and everything made of energy and so forth and so on. So that is what I am talking about. Why Jesus does not have to believe in God, but Jesus knows He is God, because Jesus knows that the only thing exists is God.
We always wonder, where do we go? Where do we go when we die? Where do we go? What happens after death? What happens after death when life after death? And I would say, again, this is my belief now, back to my belief. I believe this because this is something I think is possibly could be true, and but I cannot prove it per se. However, I have logical reason to believe that it is possible or plausible. And like I said, the question most individuals may ask, why don't we know? So where do we go when we die? We don't know where we go and where are we going? And I would say that the answer to that question is, the answer is you're looking at it. The life that you have today is, you have already died. From my perspective, from the Buddhist perspective, you've had many, many lives. You've had thousands, countless thousands and thousands and thousands of lives. I can't even tell you how much lives you've had, because you've always been trapped into this illusion of self, and we keep coming back and keep coming back. And that is the goal of the Buddhist, the enlightenment, the awareness of this matrix, this trap, to try to escape the process of rebirth, the death and rebirth cycle.
Now remember what I'm saying now. I'm not saying that the person comes back. I am talking about the energy comes back. You see, in the form of a new tree, in the form of a cat, in the form of a dog. So when one person dies, that energy comes back in another form, but it's still the same one form, which is still you. So you are not literally coming back per se as Bob or Jill or Jane or Harry. The energy that you are, that makes up Bob, Jill, Bob, or Harry, comes back in one shape, form, or another. So that is what is reincarnated. That is what is reborn again. So when the sim character dies, or when you die, whatever the game you're playing, World of Warcraft, whatever, when your ship is blown up, and or you playing in that old arcade game, and when you put a quarter in and you die, you put another quarter in, and the game starts all over again, and you get a new character, but it's the same program. It's the same exact uh, program that made the game the last time. Some of the more modern games are able to save the game and pick up where you left off. But in general, for the most part, when you die, you start over from scratch, but you do not really remember anything from the old previous game. You start over from level 1 and you have to work your way back up to level 6. Again, some games you're able to save the game so you don't have to start off where you left off, but in most cases, most games, you have to start over from level 1 and get back to where you left off with a fresh, brand new character. But it's the same program, the same ones and zero, the same bits.
Cycle, and because of being aware that this is an illusion and this is a trap, and that is what the Buddhist concept of enlightenment is all about. And again, and one of the major reasons that we do not come to this conclusion and cannot come to this conclusion, because we do not do introspection and we believe in the false self. So again, just like I was saying, uh, so back to my what I was saying is that when you, the person that you see today is is a continuation of the person that you was in the last life. Some of the things that you had carried over into this life, some of your personality traits. And if I remember clearly, there are 4 types of karma, but I'm not really necessarily here to talk about that. But the first karma, if I remember clearly, has to do with things that came over from the last life, certain habits you may have, certain personality traits you may have. Those, some of those traits might have been trickled down over into the life that you have today. So again, so now my logic behind this, so again, like I said, you have died many, many times, and this is you coming back again, not the old you, again, not, you was not John Doe or whatever name you were, whatever. This is a new, evolved you, a different part of you, and but that energy is in you that transformed into this new person. So, like I was saying.
Remember now, like I said again, I'm talking about the energy that you are, the being that you are, the essence that you are, the I amness, the isness, the consciousness that you are is what returns as the new you. Just like the waves, when the waves might be 6 foot tall, they may be raging and they may be crashing into each other. When they subside, they go back into the same water, And then when another storm comes, when another big wind comes, the waves rise again, and they appear to be separate waves, but they are still the same one body of water. The same body of water that you see behind me is the same water that's connected to some stream somewhere in Japan, Jabim, wherever the case may be. It's just that the water may be fresh water, salt water, the water color might be different, but they are all part of the same ocean, a part of the same one water that covers at least 70% of the world. The water in your feet is the same water in your face, and the same water is in your fingers, is in the same water in your chest. It's just the parts of the water is in different parts of the body, but they all are the same water. So the souls and the spirits that appear to be separate entities are all a part of this one thing called consciousness, and we also call God.
Saying so, my logic behind this is there are 5 stages of sleep. 5 stages of sleep. We have there's actually 4 stages, but most individuals they count only 4. But I'm going to count the 5. But 4 stages of sleep is uh, falling asleep, REM, light sleep, and deep sleep. If I remember clearly, falling asleep, REM, light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep is rapid eye movement. That is when we dream. That is when we sleep and we dream and we have dreams. And so we go through these cycles, and we usually go through 4 or 5 cycles of sleep throughout the night. Again, 4 stages of sleep and 4 cycles of sleep. We do this 4 to 5 times. We go from falling asleep, falling asleep, REM, light sleep, and then deep sleep. So again, my reason.
I'm not quite sure if I said those in order, but either way, I think you guys get the picture. They may not be in that exact order, but that's still those are the stages of sleep.
To believe that it is possible that this Buddhist concept could be true is because the same way when you sleep, when you fall asleep, in most cases you might be aware when you're falling asleep and you're getting tired and you feel tired and you might feel like, oh, I'm getting tired, I feel like I'm going to fall asleep. But most of us don't know when we actually fall asleep. Most of us can't tell the exact time we fall asleep. We don't know. We could be watching the time. The last time we saw the clock and it was 10 o'clock, we could say, oh, it was 10 o'clock, but we can't tell. We can't say, oh, I fell asleep at 10:30 or whatever the case may be. We actually have no clue or recognition of the actual time when we fall asleep. And also, when we did fall asleep, we don't remember where we was. We don't remember we were in our bed or in our car or wherever it is that we may be falling asleep or we fell asleep. We don't remember any of that. We can't remember. We don't remember. We don't even remember our name. We don't remember anything. However, all we notice after a period of time, we remember waking up in some dream state in some other place, fixing a car, whatever it is that we were doing. We just realize that we're doing this thing in this dream state, but we have no idea how we got there. We don't remember anything. We don't know anything. And most of us don't even remember our dreams. Most of us can't even remember the dream we had when we woke up. So that would give you an idea of where I'm going with this is. If you did fall asleep and you did go to bed, you don't remember when you fell asleep. If you did have a dream, you don't remember. Sometimes you have what they call lucid dream, when you could some people could, realize that they are dreaming and they could wake up in a dream and do things. Yes, that is very uncommon also. It's only a select few people who actually has the ability to do that on will. Sometimes it happens without us having trying to do it. Sometimes, a few times, seldomly, I think everybody or most people may have had that experience before, but they didn't do it voluntarily. It has happened on its own. Again, because we don't really control anything. If we could have controlled it, most of us would be having lucid dreams every night, waking up, flying, and doing whatever we want to do. But that is not the case, because it is a reason why we don't remember anything when we dream. It's because the body, when we dream and we fall asleep, it is a necessary process that the body goes through, to cleanse itself, to detoxify, to heal, to grow. There's all kind of growth hormone. There's a lot of stuff that goes on when we sleep. The body needs to sleep. The body organizes thoughts like a computer. defragmenting its drive and putting things back in place and so forth. That is the process that goes on when we sleep. That is why we can't remember anything when we sleep, because there's a process, a natural process where the body has to do this thing, and we have to be somewhat unaware of it. And then that's why sometimes we dream, because the things that we dream in a lot of cases may have something to do with some of our thoughts and some of the things that we may have held on in our mind psychologically throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, and throughout the years. And sometimes we just dream the same things over and over and over. Sometimes we have the same dreams repetitively, because this is a process again of a recycling of the mind, if I may say, getting rid of garbage and collecting new data, getting rid of all unnecessary data, if I may say. So back to my point. So if you cannot remember your dream, you don't remember when you fell asleep, what makes you think you could remember your last life? Most people can't even remember what they had to eat yesterday. Most people can't even remember what they had the couple of hours ago. They don't even know nothing of what went on a few hours ago. Why do you think you could remember something about your past life? And the reason is that you are not supposed to know your past life, because imagine knowing all these things happened to you in the past. Imagine if you had a tragic death, you died, it was a fire, an accident, you got burnt alive, or you was killed tragically, you starved in a room, someone left you tied up. You don't want to remember that. That would hinder your progress, that would hinder your process, that would hinder everything. And you could go and look up, I think there's a gentleman called David Hoffman. He does a good job. He's a scientist, neuroscientist, something of that sort. I can't remember who he is, but he's a smart guy. But he talks about delusion and the icons and things being illusory. So check it out, David Hoffman. He does a more, see, will give you a more scientific understanding of what I'm talking about. So again,
Yeah, the guy name is Donald Hoffman. But the point that I'm making here is, I'm kind of just stop because I'm going on too long. The point that I'm making is that it's a reason we forget things. It's a reason the brain allows us to forget, because we cannot remember everything. It would be somewhat like a computer not having the ability to refresh itself, or get rid of garbage or whatever. Every time, like a computer has those memory sticks, 8, 4 gigs, 8 gigs, 16 gigs, and 32 gigs, and all that stuff. Those are temporary memory. The computer's whole data when the computer is running, when it's on, and then when the computer is cut off or shut down, the memory, or the game cuts off, the memory goes away. So the same thing applies to the mind, the brain. We cannot remember everything. That is why sleep is so powerful and important, because when we go to sleep, the brain is given an opportunity to shut down, and certain hormones are released, and the body can heal itself, and the mind can kind of set a new, like, it's kind of to reset itself. And so therefore, memory is something that was designed for us to remember some things, the important things for us to survive through evolution. It's important to remember we need to eat. It's important to remember we need to do certain things to avoid ourselves, to not remember to not eat or drink harmful things that could be harmful to our health, which could kill us, or certain things. And so the mind is designed to remember certain things, but it's not designed to remember everything. So that is why when we go to bed at night, the mind pretty much, we have dreams, because the mind is holding on to certain things that maybe happen throughout the day, certain things that maybe happen that we don't really, might not remember subconsciously, but the mind is processing all of our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions throughout the day, and then the mind makes up, or consciousness or whatever makes up dreams, and those dreams are related to our experiences throughout the day and so forth. And after a period of time, they go away. That is why we have, sometimes we dream the same things over and over, because the mind is still holding on to certain baggage and excess garbage, and the mind has not cleared itself. So the mind job is to just eliminate unnecessary things, just like the computer. Like I said, Donald Hoffman, he was the guy who created the concept of basically everything that we see, or like icons in the computer. When you look at your computer on the screen, you see the icons, or even your phone, the icons on your phone. whatever apps you maybe have. The apps are just there to pretty much help us to navigate to whatever, to use the app. But there's so much different things going on behind the scenes, and it would be too much complications if the phones and the computers showed you all the ones and the zeros. You would not be able to function if your mind showed you the process of what's going on. So that is why the mind only shows you the icons, the eye candy, the things that we see, the things that we touch, the things that we feel. We only see the icon of that thing, but we do not know the amount of neurons that are firing. We don't know the chemicals that are released when we feel a certain way. So, from an evolutionary perspective, the brain job is to forget and to simplify things. So that is why you don't remember. Most of us don't even remember our dreams, and we don't remember things that happened a few hours ago. We don't remember what we had to eat for lunch. We can't remember what we had to eat 2 days ago, 1 day ago. It's very difficult. So the brain job is to pretty much get rid of all unnecessary things that may hinder our evolution. So the same thing would apply to why we cannot remember whatever happened to us during our second or third or fourth or thousand rebirth. Because, like I said, if something happened to you tragically and you died in a fire, or something happened to you very, very, that was not good, it would be not to your advantage to remember that, to come into this new life with that type of baggage, with that type of trauma, with that type of psychological uh, abuse, if I may say. Because think about it, if individuals are alive and they're living today and they had one bad relationship that maybe left them really, really traumatized, they had uh, something happen to them that could affect them throughout the whole entire life. They might have one bad relationship, but so bad, you might be a girl or a guy, and you would have problems throughout the rest of your life in relationships because of that bad thing that happened to you. They have people who went to the war, and they have PSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, because of having experienced so much trauma. So the job of the brain is to literally get rid of anything that it feels that's going to hinder the progress in your growth. So if there was some type of reincarnation, some type of rebirth, it would not be to your advantage to remember anything about the past life, so that you could come into this new life and start a brand new leaf and try to make the best of it, whatever cards you were dealt. That is why we do not remember, because the brain, again, just like the computer, it would not be to your advantage to see all of the ones and the zeros that's working behind the Windows or the DOS or Linux program. It would just be to your advantage to see the icon on the screen, click the icon, and the computer does the task, whatever it needs to be. But it's not to your advantage to see all the intricate details that's going on behind the scene. And the same thing applies as well to dreams and afterlife and rebirth. It would not be to your advantage to actually remember anything, because you could have had some traumatic experience. You could have been shot to death. You could have been stoned. You could have had something happen to you, and that would only hinder you in this lifetime. You could have died because of some type of disease, because you caught in a relationship or whatever. Now you come into this lifetime having relationship issues, not trusting anybody. You might have been abandoned by a parent. Now you come into this relationship feeling that you would be abandoned by your parents as well. So it is just to your advantage to not remember anything. That is why you don't even remember when you fall asleep. So if that could happen, all of that could happen to you while you are alive. Imagine what happens when you died. The same thing happens when you died. Is when you woke up, that is what happened after you died. You woke up into a new life. This is what happens after you die, not some type of strange woo-woo thing. The reality that you see now is the effect that happens after death, and that is what I believe to be true. Again, it is a belief. I do not believe in believing, but again, it just makes a lot of sense.
So if you cannot remember anything that happens in a dream, how could you remember a past life? So that is something that I believe is possible, and is possibly true, and is possibly what has happened and what do happen, but we just don't remember. You have died, yes, like I said, many, many, many times, and you just don't remember. So just like sleep, when we die, we go through a transition. It's not like we go through, it's a transition. And again, just like everything else, it happens so smoothly, you just don't remember. And now you wake up in this new body as a baby, and you don't know anything. and you wonder why, and you can't remember anything. You can't remember Jack. So it's obvious if you can't remember anything from back then, it is highly, highly possible that this is actually possible also because you couldn't even remember your dream. So trying to remember a previous life is pretty much a waste of time.
So again, I am just being open-minded. I am saying that this is a possibility and even maybe it is plausible. That is why we have to open our minds up, expand our minds and our ideas to believe in possibilities of things that we may not necessarily be taught as when we were growing up. When we were growing up, we might have been taught one thing, but over the time, when we have been exposed to many different cultures and different belief systems, like I have, my mind has expanded to the possibility of something like this happening, us being like a game character coming back into a new game as a new character, but actually still being a part of the one game, the one program. When the window is cut, when you close your computer, shut off your iPhone, shut off your Android, when it cuts off, the phone is dead, but the program is still working in the background. When you cut the program, when you cut your phone back on, the program kicks back in and all of your apps are still there or everything is still there because it still has everything stored. So something similar to that is what's going on after death. That is just my opinion on what happens. Again, not factual. Don't hold it against me. Again, speculation at best.
So I think that is pretty much the best explanation I could come up with as to why Jesus does not believe in God or does not have to believe in God, because simply Jesus knows he is God. Jesus knows he and the Father is one, and you too and the Father are one. So I'm going to end this video right now. So with that being said, I would say throughout this whole video, the goal and the purpose is to know thyself. And on an astrological note, the stars shine brightly on you always. And may the planets work in your favor always as well. Triple P, and I'm out.